For centuries, one of the most misunderstood women in history has been Mary Magdalene. You've probably heard the story, the prostitute who washed Jesus' feet with her tears. But what if everything you've been told about her is wrong? What if the real story has been buried under centuries of mistranslations, cultural biases, and outright fabrications? Today, we're uncovering the truth about Mary Magdalene and why her real legacy changes everything. 1. The myth we've all been sold. Most people think Mary Magdalene was a prostitute. It's in movies, art, even sermons. But here's the shocking truth. The Bible never says that. Not once. The idea was cemented in 591 AD when Pope Gregory I gave a sermon conflating her with an unnamed sinful woman in Luke's Gospel. One speech. That's all it took to rewrite her story for 1,500 years. The myth of Mary Magdalene as a prostitute did not just appear overnight. It was carefully constructed over centuries. Early church leaders needed a cautionary tale about female sexuality, and Mary became their perfect scapegoat. But here's what's even more disturbing. The unnamed sinful woman in Luke 7, often conflated with Mary, was not even called a prostitute in the original Greek. The word used, hamartolos, simply means sinner, a term applied to all humans in the New Testament. Yet somehow, this vague description morphed into a full-blown reputation as a sex worker. And it was not just Pope Gregory. Artists like Titian and Caravaggio immortalized her as a half-dressed penitent, reinforcing the stereotype. Even Hollywood doubled down, from The Last Temptation of Christ to The Passion of the Christ. Filmmakers could not resist the dramatic appeal of a fallen woman redeemed. But what if we've been projecting our own cultural hang-ups onto a woman whose real story is far more compelling? 2. The real Mary Magdalene. So who was she, if not a prostitute? The Gospels tell us three key things. She was from Magdala, a wealthy fishing town. She was healed by Jesus of 7 demons, likely a severe illness, not moral failing. And she was the first witness to the resurrection. That's right, the first person entrusted with Christianity's most important message was a woman. Mary's hometown of Magdala was not some obscure village. It was a thriving economic hub. Archaeologists have uncovered a first-century synagogue, a marketplace, and even a fish processing factory. This was a place of wealth and influence, which suggests Mary was not some destitute outcast. In fact, Luke 8 verses 2-3 tells us she and other women financially supported Jesus' ministry. That's right, she was a patron, not a charity case. And those 7 demons? Modern scholars argue this likely referred to severe physical or mental illness, not moral corruption. In ancient Jewish thought, illness was often attributed to spiritual forces. Jesus healing her would have been seen as liberation, not cleansing her of sexual sin. This reframes her entire relationship with Jesus, not as a sinner groveling for forgiveness, but as a healed disciple stepping into leadership. 3. Why this matters more than you think. This is not just about correcting a historical error. It's about power. For centuries, reducing Mary to a fallen woman made it easier to dismiss female leadership in the church. But when we restore her true identity, we uncover something radical. Women were central to Jesus' ministry from the start. This is not just about Mary, it's about how women's roles get minimized in religious history. Paul's letters mention female apostles like Eunia, Romans 16 verse 7. Yet later translators changed her name to the masculine Eunice to downplay her authority. The pattern is clear. When women lead, systems find ways to erase them. But here's the hopeful twist. Mary's true story is resurfacing. Scholars like Dr. Elizabeth Schrader have found evidence that early manuscripts of John's Gospel may have originally named Mary, not an anonymous, sinful woman, as the one who anointed Jesus' feet. If true, this would mean her act of devotion was deliberately anonymized, then later misattributed to her as shame. 4. The smear campaign against Mary. By the Middle Ages, artists painted her as a weeping penitent, bare-breasted, and ashamed. Some theologians even claimed she was the adulteress nearly stoned in John's Gospel, despite zero evidence. Why? Because a powerful woman at the heart of Christianity threatened the status quo. The medieval church did not just mislabel Mary, they weaponized her story. By the 13th century, sermons used her as a warning. Even the most sinful woman can repent. But look how far she fell first. This conveniently ignored that men in the Bible, like David, an adulterer and murderer, were celebrated as heroes despite their sins. The double standard could not be clearer. Art played a huge role in this distortion. Paintings like Donatello's Penitent Magdalene showed her emaciated and ragged, while Renaissance artists sexualized her with flowing red hair. None of this came from the Bible. It was pure propaganda, designed to keep women in a box of either virgin or temptress. 5. The hidden clues in ancient texts. Here's where it gets fascinating. The Gnostic Gospels, early Christian writings excluded from the Bible, describe Mary as Jesus' closest disciple. In the Gospel of Philip, she's called his companion, who knew the all. Some scholars believe she may have been a teacher in her own right. The Gnostic Gospels, discovered in 1945 at Nag Hammadi, reveal a Mary Magdalene who debates theology with Peter and is called the woman who knew the all. In the Gospel of Mary, Peter even resents her closeness to Jesus, snapping, "Did he really speak privately with a woman and not openly to us?" This tension hints at a first-century power struggle over women's roles, one that later generations solved by silencing her. Even more explosive, the Gospel of Philip calls her Jesus koinonos, a Greek term meaning partner or companion, used elsewhere for spouses. While some sensationalize this as proof of marriage, scholars argue it more likely indicates she was his intellectual equal. Either way, it's a far cry from the weeping prostitute of tradition. 6. The turning point in modern scholarship. In 1969, the Catholic Church finally admitted Pope Gregory's mistake. But the damage was done. Even today, the prostitute label sticks. Yet archaeologists have uncovered Magdala's ruins, revealing a sophisticated urban sinner. This was not some backwater. Mary was likely a woman of means and influence. Modern archaeology backs this up. In 2009, excavators in Magdala found a stunning first-century synagogue with a mosaic of the Jerusalem Temple's menorah, proof of a vibrant Jewish community. They also uncovered a unique stone carved with what may be the earliest depiction of the temple's Holy of Holies. This was not some backwater. It was a center of religious scholarship. The Catholic Church's 1969 admission that Mary was not a prostitute barely made waves. Why? Because myths are sticky. As historian Dr. Joan Taylor notes, people prefer the salacious version. It's more dramatic than a wealthy patroness funding a movement. But drama is not history. 7. What the resurrection story reveals. Think about this. In a culture where women's testimony was not admissible in court, Jesus chose Mary to announce his resurrection to the male disciples. That was not just progressive, it was revolutionary. It suggests he entrusted her with authority the church later denied to women for centuries. Consider the cultural bombshell of the resurrection story. In Jewish law, women could not testify in court. Yet Jesus chose Mary to announce Christianity's central event to the male disciples, who initially did not believe her. This was not just progressive, it was a deliberate subversion of power structures. Early Christians celebrated this. The second-century philosopher Celsus mocked Christianity as a religion started by a hysterical female, proof that Mary's role was once common knowledge. Yet by the 4th century, male leaders like Augustine were downplaying her witness, calling women the gateway of the devil. The rewriting was underway. 8. The real reason she was erased. Powerful women make uncomfortable history. When Christianity became Rome's state religion, female leadership was systematically downplayed. Mary's demotion to sinner was not an accident, it was a strategy. The erasure was not subtle. When the New Testament canon was finalized in the 4th century, texts highlighting female leadership, like the Gospel of Mary, were excluded. Later, medieval monks copying manuscripts changed women's titles, turning Unia the Apostle into Unias, a man. The motive? Control. As Christianity became Rome's state religion, it absorbed patriarchal norms. Female priests and prophets threatened this new hierarchy. Mary's demotion to sinner served a purpose. It made female authority seem unnatural. 9. How this changes everything today. Rediscovering Mary's true story is not just about the past. It's about recognizing how often women's legacies get rewritten to fit someone else's agenda. Whether in religion, history, or media, the pattern repeats. This is not ancient history, it's a mirror. Today, women's achievements still get reframed as luck or aggression. Think how female scientists like Rosalind Franklin, who photographed DNA structure, were sidelined, while male colleagues won Nobels. The Mary Magdalene playbook is alive and well. But the backlash proves progress. when Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code suggested Mary was Jesus' wife. Scholars rolled their eyes, but millions started questioning why her story felt so off. Sometimes pop culture opens doors academia cannot. 10. The legacy we choose to honor. We have a choice. Keep recycling the same old myths, or give Mary Magdalene the respect she deserves as a healer, a witness, and possibly the most important female figure in early Christianity. So what do you think? Was Mary Magdalene history's most slandered woman? Let me know in the comments. And if this video made you rethink what you've been taught, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because the truth, it's been hiding in plain sight all along.